Hello everyone! On behalf of Rainbow Loom, this is Angelyn, formerly known as Tutorials by A here on YouTube, and today I'm here to show you how to create the Zipster bracelet. If you made the bracelet I taught in Rainbow Loom's previous tutorial, you would have learned the extra border technique. That was my first time showcasing it here, and today we'll be using the same technique to make the Zipster bracelet. Here is that previous bracelet. This is the Excalibur. It will be linked in the description box below if you'd like to make it. I rated this an upper intermediate to advanced design. Today, this one I'm rating an intermediate to advanced design. I think it's just a tad easier than this one. So if you're able to make the Excalibur, I'm sure you'll be able to make the Zipster. And if you haven't made the Excalibur yet, I think the Zipster is a great place to start. This extra border technique allows us to make this bracelet on one loom, even though it looks like it's 5 bars wide. And that is just the beauty of the extra border technique. This is something I'm super excited about, and I can't wait to showcase it in more designs in the future. So if you like to make advanced bracelet designs, this is definitely something that you'll want to learn. Here is the reverse side compared to what I'm calling the front side of the bracelet. I think I just like the front more because it's giving zipper a little bit more than the other side, and just goes with the name Zipster a little better. To make this bracelet, you'll of course need a rainbow loom. Today I'll be using one loom to show you how to make this one loom version of the bracelet. However, if you have 2 looms, you can make this one that goes all the way around. To do that, you just connect your 2 looms together like this. And during this tutorial, you can omit the extension portion of the instructions and just do the design all the way down the 2 looms. I'm really excited today to be opening up this Glow Party treasure box. This box comes with 7,000 glow-in-the-dark rubber bands, 1,000 of each color that are in here, and it also includes 2 happy looms and these large C-clips. Speaking of C-clips, you'll need 1 for this bracelet. This is what the large C-clip looks like that comes in the Glow Party treasure box. Compared to a normal C-clip, you can see it's a little bit bigger. For this design, we won't be having a lot of bands to put in the clip, so you'll be fine with a normal clip as well. You'll also need a hook. Today I'm using this metal tipped one. However, this design is not super high tension, so if you have a plastic hook, that will work fine as well. The rubber band counts for the single loom version of this bracelet are 28 for the outer border, which on this bracelet is this mint color, and on this bracelet is the neon orange. For the inner border, which is yellow here and blue here, you'll need 30 bands. And in addition to this, I used 12 for my extension on the one loom version. I chose to use the same color as my inner border, but you can make your extension whatever color you would like. For the center chain, which is the white chain going through the center here and the yellow one here, I used 12 rubber bands on this bracelet. And for these bands going horizontally that are white here and purple and pink here, I'm calling these the out bands, and you'll need a total of 22 of those. Before beginning, I'm first going to make sure that my loom is oriented properly by checking down here and making sure that this arrow at the bottom says the number 1. Our first step is to place our inner border bands, which are blue on this bracelet and yellow on this one. Throughout this tutorial, I'll be referring to these as both the inner border bands and the bottom layer of border bands because we'll be putting them on our loom first, and therefore they'll be at the bottom. So I'm going to take a single rubber band first and simply place this on the bottom center pin. This will help us close up our bracelet later. And now we'll start with making the border. So for this border, I'm simply going to take 1 band at a time and line the outside of my loom. So I'm starting at the bottom center pin, moving up to the left, and then I'll go vertically up here on the left side, and I'll continue doing this entire left side down my loom, and then we'll come back to do the right side later. So just 1 band at a time. This is just a basic single chain basically, just going straight down the loom. And when we reach the end here, I'm going to go vertically up to the very top left pin, like that. And our last band will be from the center pin up to the top left to connect. So at this point, this is what my loom looks like, and we are going to do the same exact thing to the right side. So starting at the very bottom, 1 band at a time, up to the right, and then we'll continue making this single chain down the entire right side of our loom. And again, when we reach the very end on the right side, we're going to do the same thing, going from the center pin up to the top right. So now this is what my loom looks like, and you should have 1 rubber band left of this color if you counted yours out. We're gonna save this because this will end up being our cap band that we place on the end. Now I'm gonna go through and push all of my rubber bands down because for the extra border technique, we'll be adding another layer. We'll be placing our second border layer next, also known as our outer border layer. So on this bracelet, it's orange, and on this one, it's mint colored. For this step, we'll be placing our second border layer in the exact same pattern as our first, omitting this single loose band at the bottom here. So I'm just gonna go diagonally here, and then we'll go vertically all the way down the left side of the loom first. And same thing when we get to the end, we'll place one last band going diagonally this way. And now we'll go back and do the right side. Going diagonally first, and then I'll go vertically all the way down the right side of my loom. And again, same thing at the end, we'll place our last band going diagonally up to the right. So at this point, your loom should look like this. We have 2 border layers on here for the extra border technique, and I'm now going to go through and push all of these rubber bands down. And next we'll be placing our out bands. They're called out bands just because of how we'll be moving them during the hooking process. And on this bracelet they're white, and on this bracelet they're pink and purple. We'll be starting with this pin here, which is second from the bottom in the center row. I'm taking a single band and placing it on this pin up diagonally to the left. Next, I'll take my next band and place it up diagonally to the right, and we've completed our first row. We'll continue this on the next pin above now, going up diagonally to the left, and then doing the same thing on the right side. Now for our next one, we'll move up another pin and go diagonally to the left, and then to the right again. And we'll continue this process down our loom, and I'll meet you back near the end to show you where we'll be stopping. So here at the end, this will be our last portion of the out bands that we'll be placing. Looks like I may have miscounted earlier. So these are the last out bands that we'll be placing. There should not be any up here at the very top. And at this point, this is what my loom looks like. And the last bands we'll be adding are our center chain bands. On this bracelet, they're yellow, and on this one, they're white, going through the middle. And the center chain is exactly how it sounds. It's just a chain going through the center. So I'm starting at the very bottom center pin, going up 1, and we'll continue making this chain straight down the middle of the loom all the way to the end. Here is my last band here. And at this point, your loom should look like this. And we're now ready to rotate 180 degrees. And the last thing we'll be doing before starting the hooking process is adding our cap band. So this is the same color that I'll be using for my inner border, which is blue on this bracelet. I just think it looks really cool how this border connects going in because of how the bands are placed. And to place a cap band, you can do this 2 ways. One way is to use this hook with the cap band applicator at the end. You'll simply take a single rubber band and double it over onto the end of this hook, twist, and reapply. Then on the pin that you want to add this cap band on, you place the applicator here and just slide this rubber band down. If you don't have this hook, you can take this rubber band and just place it on that bottom center pin, twist, and reapply for a band doubled over. So this is the pin that our cap band should be on, and now we're ready to start the hooking process. Our first step is to hook the center chain, so all these bands that go vertically straight down the middle of our loom. To do this, I'm inserting my hook into the top 2 layers of this bottom center pin. These 2 layers are the cap band. I'm grabbing the 3rd layer, which should be this rubber band right here. So this is our 3rd layer. Going in through the top 2, grabbing the 3rd layer, and removing this from the pin and hooking this upwards to the next one above. We'll continue hooking this all the way down to the end of our loom. So reaching in here, grabbing this green band, hooking above, and I'll meet you back at the end of the loom. So here I am at the end of my loom, and I'm going to hook this very last band going up to the top. And at this point, your loom should look like this. And we'll start back at the bottom here to next do our outer border bands. So remember from earlier, we placed 2 layers of border bands. Our first border layer for me is teal, which we placed on first. And for me, the second border layer is white. We'll be hooking the second border layer during this step, so I'll be hooking the white bands here. Starting at the bottom here at the cap band, I'm gonna go inside the top 2 layers and grab the third layer. The top 2 layers are the cap band, and the third one is my white band, which I'll be hooking down diagonally. Now we'll hook the entire left side going vertically, and we're only hooking the white bands right now. So I'm reaching into the top 2 layers, grabbing the third one, which is my white band, and going upwards to the next pin. Now for this one, we have an out band here. You want to make sure you go inside the pin, in through the out band to where you can use the back of your hook to push the out band out of the way, which you can see right here, this is the out band. And as I push that out band out of the way, I'm going to go down, grab what is now the 4th layer, and put that upwards. So as you can see, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 layers. This is the 4th one, and that's what we'll be grabbing when we hook. Down here we didn't have an out band, so that one was the 3rd layer that we hooked upwards, but now it'll be the 4th layer if you're counting. And I'm going to hook these vertically all the way to the end of my loom. So I'm reaching the end here, and we're gonna do this very last one going diagonally to the center. Now we'll go back down to the bottom of our loom and do the right side. We'll start here at the bottom center pin again and hook this band that's going diagonally down to the right. Earlier I forgot to emphasize, but you want to hook this by grabbing it this way, removing it from the pin, and you want to fold it over like that. So that way there's no twist here. If by chance you were to twist it, this is what it would look like, where you grab the band here, you remove it from the pin, but you place it on like this. And so if you were to try and spread these 2 layers apart, you wouldn't be able to get this separation like you do here, because they're crisscrossed in the center. So if you do that, go ahead and replace your band to where it looks like this, and then pick up the band again and fold it over to where your hook opening starts up here, but then it faces downwards as you place the band onto that pin. And now when you pull these apart, you should be able to get an opening like this, just like this side. Now I'll continue hooking this chain vertically upwards. And make sure you're going inside of the out band here where you can push this back, and you're going inside to grab your next chain. Again, as I reach the end, I'm gonna go vertically, and then my last band is gonna be this one going into the top center pin. At this point, this is what your loom should look like, and the next step that we'll be doing is a crucial part of the extra border technique. I would say this is probably like the core of the extra border technique, and that is flipping over some of our border bands. So we just hooked our outer border bands, also known as our second layer of border bands, which for me are white. Now we'll be flipping these over. If you watched the previous tutorial I uploaded on Rainbow Loom's channel, this technique will be very familiar to you because we'll be doing essentially the same thing, flipping our border bands over. It doesn't matter the order that you do this in, whether you start down here and go up here and then here, or if you go in order on both sides. I'm just gonna start on this second to last pin here on the right because it's easiest to show on camera, and then we'll come back and do this bottom one later. So we're gonna go up from here first. I'm starting at this pin here, and our objective is to flip over this top band on the inside of the loom over to the outside. So just to explain it more thoroughly, we'll be flipping over one layer of rubber bands that's closest to the center here on the right side first. So starting on the right side here on this pin, I'm gonna grab the very top layer of this border band, which for me is white. you'll see that there's two white layers here, and they're sandwiching an outband, which for me is blue. It's jelly, so it might be a little hard to tell that it's blue on camera, but we have a layer on top, and then we have a layer below this outband. You're gonna grab the layer that's on top of the outband and hook it over this pin to the outside, like that. So now this outband will be kind of the top layer from this view. Moving on to the next pin up here, we'll do the same exact thing. When I grab this top layer that's inside, and by inside I mean closest to the center of the loom, I like to grab it and give it a little run to make sure that I didn't grab the wrong layer, because if I accidentally grab the bottom layer here and run it, I'll see that outband move, which means I've grabbed the wrong one. I grab this one, run it, the outband isn't moving, so I can flip it over, and I'm done with that pin. So now we'll move on to the next one above, and we'll continue doing this all the way down the loom, except we won't be doing this band here or this band here. So stop at these two up here. So I just did this one, I'm moving on to the next one. You see this V shape here, I'm grabbing the inner portion of the V shape and hooking this over to the outside. Onto the next pin, grabbing the inner portion, the top layer of this V shape. The outband isn't catching, so I'm good. If I grab the bottom layer again, you'll see the outband is catching, and it gets weird when I flip it over. So I know that I've grabbed the wrong one. I grab the top one and flip it over. So now moving on to our next pin, grabbing this layer, making sure I didn't catch the outband, and I flip it over. So I'm going to continue doing this to the second to last pin on my loom. So here is the very last one I'll do, and I stop there, and we won't be doing this one because if we take this off, then it'll just fall off the pin and unravel. So moving down to the bottom, remember we skipped this very bottom one because it's shaped a little differently, but once you learn how to do the steps through the other ones, this one should be easier. So for this very bottom right one, we'll be flipping over this small horizontal portion that's right here. So you want to grab the top layer of this, like that, and then you can pull it over this bottom right pin like that. Now we'll do the left side. You can see I have a very small portion here to flip over. It's super tiny, but you want to do it to where it's to the right of this chain that's going right here. So it's this tiny little sliver that's in there. I'm going to stick my hook in to try and grab this top layer like that, and this is what I'll be hooking over that bottom left pin. Earlier we were flipping over the left side of this V shape. Now on this V shape, we'll flip over the right side since it's closest to the center of the loom. So flip that over to the outside, and then we'll continue doing that down our loom. And here is the last one that we'll do up at the top here. So these two bands up here should not be flipped over, but all of the other white bands on my loom have been. And this is what it looks like. And that is the extra border technique, basically. For our next steps, we'll be hooking our first border layer along with the outbands at the same time. We'll start with the left side first, and then we'll come back and do the right side. So starting at this bottom center pin, we have this cap band that now kind of looks like a triangle, and we'll go inside of it and grab this next layer here, and we'll hook this down to the bottom left pin. Remember that we want to pull this off and fold it over and place it onto this pin. We don't want to twist it like this and place it on. So I have it here, I'm folding it over to where the opening of my hook is now facing downwards, and I'm placing it onto this pin. Now to continue, I'll go into this bottom left pin here, through all of these layers, pushing them back with the back of my hook, and then I'm grabbing the very bottom layer. To give you another view of what this looks like, I'm going inside here, pushing all of these layers back and grabbing this very bottom layer, pulling it up through this pin, and then we'll hook this above to the pin that's above it. Now we'll start establishing a pattern for our hooking. It'll end up being border band, then outband, and then a border band, and then another outband. So since we just did a border band, I'm gonna go over to this pin here, grab this first outband on the left, make sure you're going inside of this center chain, grabbing it, and remember we're folding over. So opening of my hook is pointing up right now. I'm folding it over to where the opening of my hook is now pointing down. And then I place this onto this pin. If you fold your band over, then you should see that there's a gap here between this branch of the band and then this one. If they're twisted, you won't be able to separate these two arms of the band like that. Now going back to the border band, make sure you're going inside of this pin, pushing back these out bands, and then grabbing the very bottom border layer and hooking this upwards to the pin above. Now for the out band, I'm going over here and hooking this out band here. And fold that over. Going inside of this pin now and grabbing this very bottom band, hooking it upwards, and then grabbing this next out band and folding it over onto this pin here. Just to give you a side view, I'm reaching in through all of these bands here, pushing them back for the next border band, grabbing that bottom layer, and then we'll hook this upwards to the pin above. And then for this out band, I'm grabbing this band here through the green center chain and folding it over to place it onto that next pin. So I'm going to continue alternating between hooking a border band and then hooking an out band all the way down the left side of my loom, and I'll meet you back here towards the end of my loom to show you how to finish the left side. So now I'm reaching the end here. I'm going to hook my last out band, and then our last two bands that we'll hook on the left side are this vertical one here, that's the border band, and then another border band that's going here up and diagonally to the top center pin. At this point, this is what my loom looks like, and now we have to go back to the bottom to do the right side. So going in through this cap band, which is now stretched to kind of a funny shape, we'll go in through here and grab this bottom band. This will go to the bottom right, and remember, we're flipping this over, or folding it over and placing it on that pin. For this bottom pin, I'm reaching in through all of these layers and grabbing the very bottom band, and this will end up getting hooked vertically upwards. And at this point, we'll start alternating between our out bands and our border bands. So going in through here, I'm gonna grab my out band, and remember, we're pulling this off of the pin. My hook opening is pointing upwards at this point, and now when I fold it over, it'll be pointing downwards as I fold that over. Next is a border band, so I'm reaching in through here, grabbing that border band and hooking it upwards to the next pin above. Next is an out band again, so I'm going in through here, grabbing the next out band. Remember not to twist it like this would cause a twist. We're folding it over like that. And then I can separate these two and I know that it's not twisted. Not that you have to separate the two ends on every band, it's just to check if it's twisted. Back to a border band. And now an out band, going in through here, grabbing this band and folding it over onto this pin. You'll kind of be going diagonally downwards. Then in through this out band, pushing those layers back, grabbing this very bottom layer, which is my border band that's going to be hooked upwards. And now we have another out band. And I'm going to continue this process down to the end of my loom, and I'll meet you when I'm reaching the end. Here I am at my last out band, and then we'll hook our last border band going vertically, and then the very last border band, which is going to go diagonally, like that. At this point, your loom should look like this, and we've completed the hooking process for this main portion of our bracelet. Now to remove this from the loom so that way we can make room to make an extension, I'm going to rotate my loom like this, and recall that we have this loose rubber band that we placed on this top pin here. I'm going to grab this with my left hand, or my non-dominant hand, and I'm going to reach my hook in through all of these layers that we have on this top pin. There are a lot of layers, so you want to make sure that you're through all of them, otherwise you might lose a portion of your bracelet. So here's a side view. I have my hook through all of these layers here. I'm pushing them back and wiggling it around to make sure that I'm seeing that all the layers are on my hook. And using my hook, I'm going to grab this very bottom one, which is this rubber band that's loose, and I'm going to pull it up through this pin here. You want to be very gentle and very slow so that way this doesn't snap, because there are a lot of rubber bands on this pin. I'm going to pull it off of the pin here, And instead of tugging to try and even things out, I'm just gonna add this other end that's in my left hand onto the hook. So now this is secured. I'll push it up through here. And now we are safe to remove this from our loom. I'm going to start at the bottom here. I wouldn't start by pulling with the hook side because that band up there has a lot of tension on it and you definitely don't want anything to break. I'm so excited with how this looks. The front and the back are a little bit different, so this is a reversible bracelet, but I think that this other side looks cooler. Now we'll create our extension. I'm starting with my loom oriented to where this bottom arrow here says the number 1. For my extension, I like to use the same color that I used for my inner border. I'm gonna start by taking a single band, placing it from this bottom center pin up to the right, and then we'll start making a zigzag one band at a time down our loom. My extension is going to be 12 bands long. I have a pretty small adult wrist, just for size reference. If you'd like an in-depth tutorial on how to do a single chain bracelet, I'll have that in the description box below. This extension is basically made the same way. So here's my loom, and at this point I'm going to rotate 180 degrees to where the bottom of my loom now says the number 2 with this arrow. And to whatever is the very bottom pin of your single chain, we'll take this bracelet that's on our hook here, and we'll transfer these 2 layers of rubber bands here onto this bottom pin. For me, I like to give this a stretch and insert my index finger into these 2 layers with my hook so that way it's easier to transfer. Then I'll take this and place this on to this bottom center pin here, or whatever is your last pin of your chain, and then we can start hooking. So I'm gonna hold this out of the way just so you guys can see a little bit better. I'm gonna go inside through these 2 layers and grab this single chain and pull it off of the pin and hook it up to the left. And then we'll continue hooking this single chain by going inside, grabbing the bottom layer and hooking it diagonally. And I'll continue this all the way down my loom. So here, when I've reached the end, we can go ahead and grab our C-clip. I'm gonna use the one that came with my Glow Party treasure box. And we're gonna scoop up these 2 layers that are on whatever your very last pin is that you hooked your last bands onto. So giving this a tug, the C-clip should be holding the same layers that are on this pin. And if so, you can go ahead and remove this from the loom. A very important step for me is untwisting any twisted bands, checking to see if anything's twisted, but it looks like everything for the most part is laying really nicely. Now I'll take the end with my C-clip and I'm gonna grab the cap band from the other end, which should be this little circle here. And here is our completed Zipster bracelet. Thanks so much for watching this tutorial on how to create the Zipster bracelet. I would love to see your creations and your color combos that you've used to make this on Instagram if you post to the hashtag Rainbow Loom and tag official Rainbow Loom at this username. Our team loves to see and reshare your posts, so be sure to share them with us on there as well as TikTok at the same username. All of the supplies I used today can be found at rainbowloom.com or at our partner retailers. And again, thanks so much for watching this tutorial. I really hope you enjoyed it, and I can't wait to see you next week in Rainbow Loom's next video. Bye!